Bears select Caleb Williams, quarterback, Southern California.
What's up, Bears fans? Welcome back to the Willis Twin Towers podcast. We are your hosts. My name is Tim Willis, and here to the left, looks like Aldo changed it up on us a little bit this week, but to my left here is my brother Jeff. Guys, it's been a couple weeks since we've seen you. A lot of stuff going on. Training camp starts tomorrow. We had some press conferences today. We had a new edition of 1920 Football Drive, and just outside of the Chicago Bears, the NFL has been pretty busy as far as televised things go, because now we've got Hard Knocks with the Giants. That's been really, really interesting, and it's been a really good watch if you guys have seen that. And it makes me really excited to see the Chicago Bears on Hard Knocks. So, guys, we got a great show planned for you tonight. Jeff, why don't you say hello to the folks and give them an idea of what's coming tonight?
What's up, guys? It's good to see you. I see our resident Irish fan who's here quite often. Jay Grizz is here saying "Go Irish." Hey, Jay Grizz, did you happen to see the new uniforms that Notre Dame came out with for this season? How they have the gold ND on the shoulder now? I think Aldo's got a picture of this, and they are really cool. If you guys haven't seen them yet, yeah, here it is on the screen. I think they look, in my opinion, they're badass. Tim thinks it's a little garish for his liking, but I think it's great.
I think the gold's a bit gauche when it comes to the shoulder, but I do like them a lot. I just think it's a little bit away from the traditional look for your home jerseys. I do like that as like an alternate, but I'm okay with it anyway. It's not like I hate it. I just thought it was a little bit gauche.
I think it's great. I love the look. I think Notre Dame has been very simplistic over the years, and I really like how and it's good to stay somewhat simplistic. As many of you guys know who watch Notre Dame football, they still don't even have any real logos or anything in the end zones. It's just slash marks. It's very traditional. They finally put a logo in the middle of the field several years ago. Brian Kelly was a big part of that when he was the coach. But yeah, I personally think it's cool how they're starting to ingrain more modernized looks into themselves, as opposed to how they've been so traditional over the years. I love the gold on the shoulders. I think it looks great.
I agree with you, Jay Grizz, too. I think they should have done a little bit more of an outline on the monogram, too, instead of the navy blue to match the navy blue. But I don't hate it. Like I said, I know Jeff kind of took it that way, but I just thought it was a little bit gauche for your home jerseys, but I do like it a lot. And Notre Dame's gotten a lot more innovative over the last few years, and they've kind of gone outside their comfort zone a bit. And honestly, a lot of that is because of Brian Kelly, but it's only going to get bigger and better now with Marcus Freeman at the helm. But yeah, I like it too, Jeff. Sorry to cut you off there.
No, you're fine. Just to make one more comment about it before we jump into all this Bear stuff, Jay Grizz, I agree with you. I think it would look a little more cool if they had the white underline, or white outline, I should say, around it with the trim. Aldo says that the uniform will attract more players who love looking cool, and that's probably true. But if you guys haven't paid attention, Notre Dame is really doing some serious recruiting in the last couple of years, and they have one of the better classes. As a matter of fact, there's a big-time wide receiver who's going to announce tomorrow where he's going, and Notre Dame is one of his finalists. His name's Derek Meadows, and if they get him, it's a big deal for this offense coming up in the next several years. So, and Grizz also mentions that he doesn't like the Under Armour logo in the center of the jersey under the collar. They're going to have that logo somewhere. It probably would be better if it was on the front shoulder. I'm not necessarily in disagreement with you there, but it's got to be somewhere. So, and he says, hey, as long as we win, the uniforms aren't really a big deal to me. And I agree with you. I feel like they could and should make the playoffs this year with a legitimate chance of making some noise here. So I'd love to see it. It'd be awesome. But before we get too far into Notre Dame stuff, I know not all you guys are fans of the Irish. So let's break down what we came here to break down, and that's our Chicago Bears and training camp that's coming up. As Tim mentioned, there were several press conferences today that were part of the workload that we saw, and they all went in twos. So it started off with Ryan Poles and Matt Eberflus, and then they had, I believe it was TJ Edwards and Tremaine Edmonds were the next one, and then they had DJ Moore and Cole Kmet, and then finally they wrapped it up with Caleb Williams and Roma Dunze together. And they were all very good interviews. Everybody had a little bit of something to say that kind of caught my attention. There wasn't a whole lot of wow to anything and a lot of big news, but it's just interesting stuff that they had to say. And we definitely have some clips for you guys that we'll get to. But Tim, did you have any, did you take anything away from that really caught your ear that you wanted to get into before I make my piece on it?
Yeah, there's a couple things that came to mind right off the bat. Number one, after hearing the press conferences and hearing them speak a little bit more during this offseason and watching that 1920 football drive, one big thing I noticed is that TJ Edwards and Tremaine Edmonds have both stepped up in a massive role as leaders on this team. And you're really starting to hear more of Tremaine Edmonds. I think last year with his first year in the Bears, he was kind of a little more on the quiet side and just kind of being a little less of a vocal leader, but he's really starting to take on that role this year, it sounds like. And as a matter of fact, in that press conference, TJ Edwards is usually the one that speaks the most, took a back seat to Tremaine Edmonds in that press conference and let him, give most of the answers and speak more. And also, Aldo makes a great point here too. Cole Kmet should be a captain. He's another one that's becoming way more outspoken now and really starting to step up as a leader. And you can hear that. And I 100% agree. I think he should be a captain as well. There's multiple things that I've noticed as far as that goes. And, again, just those linebackers have really stepped up into that leadership role. And like you said, Cole Kmet, and also watching that 1920 football drive, it is going to be a really, really fun season in that wide receiver room. Those guys just have a blast together. Keenan Allen has walked in and it's like he's been here for 10 years. Like he's super comfortable in that role. It looks like him and DJ Moore already have built a little bit of a friendship. It seems they get along really well based on everything that I've seen so far. And I really love it. I love that those guys are building that camaraderie already. Caleb Williams seems to already have that rapport built with these guys. And it's only going to get better as the chemistry builds and as the season goes on and as training camp completes and preseason completes. There's a lot of good things I've seen from this so far as the players go and how these guys are really starting to gel. And I love it. I love seeing that. You can see it on this clip here. Those two just having fun together. But again, this is something that we've been hoping to see like this. I feel like this is what's been missing for a while. Just guys that are loose, relaxed, having fun, playing together. There's not a lot of pressure, I don't think. I mean, there is, because as fans and as media and things like that, our fan base expects a playoff team, really. But I don't think these guys view it the same way. Like Cole Kmet said in his press conference, I had the same mindset since I got here. It's to make the playoffs and win the Super Bowl. So I just feel like they're playing more loosely now and feeling a lot better about the situation they're in. And the roster is showing, how competitive they can be. And the other thing that I noticed from this press conference is I'm not a big fan of what Eberflus had to say. I'm trying to remember who asked the question. I think it was Mark Carman from CHGO that asked the question. What about the preseason? What do you plan on doing with Caleb Williams? Are you going to play him a little more often since he's a rookie and get him some more snaps? Or what kind of approach are you going to take? And basically Matt Eberflus said, we're going to look at what we've done over the last few years and basically use that as our guide. And we're going to do something similar to that. But it does depend on the game and the situation and things. But basically, we're going to stick with what we've done. And that is a little bit of a concern a lot of a concern for me. Number one, the team was not prepared to play week 1 last year. They didn't have enough time in the preseason. These guys did not play enough. They just didn't. And they didn't gel early like they did as the season went on. I just think it's a big mistake, number one, for anybody. But number two, a rookie quarterback who has got to get his bearings under him. He's got to get used to playing at the NFL level. And I know injury is a concern and things of that nature, but he needs to play. He needs to get some reps out there, some meaningful reps, and 45 to 50 reps in the preseason in a 4-game span, because we have a 4th game now this year with the Hall of Fame game. That's not even 10 snaps a game. Or it's 10 to 15 snaps in a game, and that's just not going to cut it for a rookie quarterback, in my opinion. And I don't know where you stand on this, Jeff, but I don't like that approach, and I feel like this is something that we've all noticed, and even Matt Eberflus, I'm sure, has noticed that is something that could, be fixed. Like they could do something to change this. And it sounds like it's same old with him and same old Eberflus as far as that regard goes.
I do want to. I did find some concern on that as well. Before I kind of give you guys my take, just a quick reminder. I didn't say it at the beginning of the show. If you guys haven't already, please give us a like on the video. Please give us all a follow. You can follow Aldo at Barroom Network. You can follow me at _Jeff Willis, and you can follow Tim at Tim Willis 24. Those are all on X. And please, if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel here on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts from. It helps us to grow and continue to bring you guys great Bears coverage. So, but in any case, there's some comments here I want to get to as well. But I agree with you, Tim. I was a little concerned by that comment. I thought he would come out and say something like, "Hey, we started off the season flat last year in Green Bay," and that's saying things nicely because they looked like, in my opinion, pardon my French, but they looked like dog shit against Green Bay in that first game of the year, especially in the trenches. They got beat up left and right all over the place. So that was concerning to me. I would like to see them get more reps in the preseason from all the starters, but in particular in the trenches from Caleb, especially because he's going to need every rep he can get to be ready for the season as he's a rookie. So yeah, I agree with you. I thought that was a little concerning that he basically said our history is going to dictate what we do because that's what we've done in the past. And because in my opinion, that what they've done in the past hasn't really worked, especially last year. Again, they came out flat. So I do hope that that's more talk than anything else, and they do get more reps than what he said, because I think he said 45 to 50 was the amount of reps he expected most of these guys to get. So I would like to see it closer to like 60 or even 70.
I think he was talking specifically about Caleb when he said that, the 45 to 50.
He might have been, but I would still like to see it, and that's Eberflus. There's a clip here that Aldo has about this, so let's go ahead and play that, and I'll give you guys more of my take on it.
Yeah, we've looked at it. We're discussing it. We haven't made any decisions, but certainly want to get them some reps. I know the guys last year got 45 to 55 reps, in terms of those guys. And we're looking at that, right in that range. We'll see. But again, it's always week to week because you got to see what the health of your line is and where everybody is. But certainly all those exposures are equally as valuable.
So, yeah, what he ended up saying after that was basically that those reps are all good, but we also have to consider practice, and that's a big part of the reps that these guys are going to get is going against our defense. And granted, the Bears do have an excellent defense. They could potentially be a top 5 defense this year. But the one concern I have about that is when you go up against the same offense or the same defense every day, you're going to pick up on tendencies. You're going to figure out play calls. You're going to figure out what these guys are doing, and it's going to make things a little bit easier to have success. So when you're getting different looks from different teams, I think that's helpful and beneficial for you to see more and to get better at. And because once you've seen it in the past, now you can kind of start to look for it more in the future and maybe build upon it. So it's a good thing. I feel like that they're going to have that joint practice with the Bengals. If you guys haven't heard already, they are having a joint practice with Cincinnati. And I think that'll be beneficial to everybody to see a different look, to get a different feel. And if you guys didn't notice already, the Cincinnati's got a very, very good defensive coordinator over there, and their defense is pretty good too. So I think that'll be a good look for Caleb and the rest of the offense. And again, I still hope that they get more reps in these preseason games than they have in the past, because I want to see them come out firing from day one. As a matter of fact, there was a clip from Cole Kmet and DJ Moore's press conference where they were talking about, somebody had asked them what their expectations were for how quickly they want the offense to get going and gel and learn the new system that's being put in place, and how quickly they expect everything to come together. And I thought it was telling. I think Aldo has a clip of this as well, but the first thing that DJ said as soon as the question was asked was tomorrow. And then Cole Kmet cut him off and said, yeah. I mean, the sooner the better. We want to get this done as fast as possible. So if you have that clip, Aldo, if you could go ahead and play that for us so we can show everybody. Oh, I'm sorry, you don't have it. It's okay. But basically, like I said, guys, they basically said, yeah, we anticipate and hope that we get this thing going right away, and because we're going to need all the time we can get during game day, to be acclimated. We want to start off firing on all cylinders. We want to be ready to go. So, and again, like I said to you guys before, they weren't ready to go last year in game one, and hopefully that tide is going to turn, coming this season. That's why I want to see them get more reps, and I want to see them to get acclimated faster so that we can come out guns a-blazing, for lack of a better term. So, that's just my piece on that part of it. I hope that things are going to be different than they have been in the past in regards to how much time they do play. Now, in regards to Hall of Fame game, there's been some speculation. People have been asking, do you think that Caleb and the starters will play in that game? I don't think they'll play probably at all. And if they do get Caleb into that game, it'll be for like a snap or two to maybe hand the ball off just to appease the NFL, in my opinion, because typically your starters don't play in that game. It's a fourth preseason game, an extra one. And I just don't anticipate them playing any of their starters in that really at all. And if they do, again, it's just going to be, for the fans to get an eye on Caleb to make the NFL happy. So
I think the NFL is going to make the Bears play Caleb Williams. If nothing else, just play a snap. I think they're going to tell him he needs to get on the field. Whether or not he plays more than a snap or two, I think they're going to tell him he needs to get on the field. Just because it's the first game of the season. It's the number one overall pick. They want it, and it's probably intentional that they did it that way to begin with, besides the Bears having 3 players entering the Hall of Fame, the most of any of the other teams. But I just feel like I like what Aldo says. They should assign Hester to one-day contract and have him return a punt. That would be amazing.
And he'd probably be a better punt returner than anything they have right now. Yep. Today, he'd probably return punts better today. He's probably pushing 50 by now, but he'd return punts better today than anybody else on the team would. So
that's probably right.
Maybe he's probably not pushing 50 yet, but he's in his 40s in any case. So, and there's a couple of points in here that I want to get to as well. We were talking about captains earlier, and Aldo had mentioned that he thought Kmet should be a captain. I could very well see that being the case. I think DJ will be a captain. I think Tremaine will be a captain again. And Jay Grizz asked a question. I was going to get to this, so I'm glad you put it on the screen, Aldo. He wants to know if they already announced the captains, and they did not, Jay. They typically announce that right before the start of the season, if I'm not mistaken. And from what Eberflus said, the players will get a vote in that, but he also has a big part in that as well. He also helps kind of decide who the captains are going to be. I can't remember if he said it was like a 2/3 to 1/3 vote kind of thing, but in any case, he will make it. He will give a player's vote there, and he'll also have part of that decision as well. But again, I would be shocked if DJ wasn't a captain again. I fully anticipate Tremaine Edmonds to be a captain again, just because he's a very vocal leader, and he's also, you can tell by the way others interact with him that he's looked up to. And Tim, you made a good point about Cole Kmet earlier as well. He's really started to take on a leadership role, and he's more vocal. And Caleb said something today in his press conference that caught me, that I noticed. He mentioned that Cole will tell him if he's done something wrong or if he sees something. And I'm not sure that Cole would have always taken that. What's the word I'm looking for? I'm not sure he would have always exactly done that in the past. But the fact that he's going out there and he's taking his boy Caleb, his new quarterback, and saying, hey, this is what I'm seeing. This is where you made a mistake. I think that's big. And I think that's also big that Caleb is listening to what Cole has to say and taking that in and using initiative. That was the word I'm looking for. Thank you, Aldo. And I think that's good that he's listening. Like I said, that Caleb is listening to this stuff and he's taking it in and he's relishing in it and he's learning from it, because that's what we need. That's what we expect. They also talked today in the press conferences about progress from multiple people. Eberflus talked about it. Caleb talked about it. They want to see progress every day. They want to just see him getting better, not necessarily taking huge jumps here and there, but are we getting better every single day? Are we getting better from the first practice to the fourth practice? So I thought that was key as well. And I think that's important to consider, because as long as we are seeing this, as long as we are seeing the improvement and the progress, that's what we want. So that, to me, that's,
I'm going to piggyback off you for just a second, Jeff. Even in that 1920 football drive, just to piggyback off the Cole Kmet stuff, I know Cole and Justin were close, and at the end of the season, you could tell Cole he knew it was coming, and because he makes visits on CHGO, and you just hearing him talk, you could tell that he knew it was coming. He doesn't necessarily like it, but he understands that's the direction the team was going. And as soon as he knew that Caleb was the guy, he was all in on it. And then watching that 1920 football drive, Cole's standing on the sideline because it's a receiver drill, and Caleb's making passes, and you hear him over there. Nice ball, 18. Hey, man, nice throw, Caleb. Way to get it to your guy. That was the open guy. Like, just on the sideline saying those kinds of things. That's a leader, a fifth-year veteran saying those things to a rookie, and that speaks volumes to me that, as close as he was to Justin, he understands this is a business. And now I got to get close with this guy, with my new quarterback. And I feel like that's the guy that Caleb has kind of meshed with the most as far as teammates go outside of Rome and the rookies. I just feel like that's the kind of the veteran that he's gravitated to based on the comments that I've heard from him. And I would say that that has a lot to do with what Cole has done, like even on the sidelines, like I was talking about, or, just you can tell he's kind of been the guy there for Caleb as he's needed. Sorry to cut you off, but I wanted to piggyback off of what you were saying there with that, because I've noticed that as well.
No, that's totally fine. I agree with you. And there's some comments in here still about captaincy that I think it's important that you guys are talking about here. And Cliff mentions the guys he wants to be captains. He thinks Edmonds and Byard, maybe Sweat, Caleb, Komet, DJ, Keenan, and Tevin. So a couple of them that I would agree with in there. I think Edmonds is a shoe-in to be a captain, as I said before. I think DJ, to me, should be a shoe-in to be a captain again, because he was voted captain last year, and it's not like he's done anything to not be a captain now this year. So I would be surprised if he wasn't voted in. Tevin, I don't see, just because he hasn't been on the field enough, and I know he's respected by his teammates and whatnot, but you got to consider the fact that there's a lot of other players on this team who are also deserving of this. I would not be surprised if Caleb is voted a captain. That being said, he is a rookie. And again, there's other guys on this offense that are worthy of it, like Cole Kmet. And if they have three guys that are captains on offense, I wouldn't be totally shocked, but I would see it being more like two. And then I know that Flus likes to do that rotating captain also every week. So we'll see if, I'm sure Caleb will be a captain at some point in time, if not right away from week one. And Aldo mentioned that he wants to see like a special teams aces captain. I believe Cairo Santos was a captain for the special teams last year. He wants to see a guy like Sanborn. I wouldn't be surprised by that as a special teams captain. I think that would be cool. But in any case, I do think that the shoe-ins, like I said before, are Edmonds and Moore. And I'm going to be really interested to see who the teammates vote as those other captains on the team, because that's going to show me a lot about what they're seeing and who they think is worthy of that. And again, I would not be surprised to see it be Caleb Williams. Now, CJ Stroud was voted on a captain last year by his teammates in Houston. So, and that was a rookie.
Well, I agree, but look at the roster that he had there compared to the veteran leadership
that
Bears team has.
That's true. But again, you're talking about a guy who came in and was a leader right away. And this is exactly what Caleb's been doing. He's come in and done everything the right way by all accounts. He's been a good leader. He's been a grinder. He goes in. Everybody's talking about how he goes in early to be prepared and to watch film and do what he needs to do. He said he's only, in his press conference today, he said he's only taken a couple days off so far this offseason. It's just been work. So he seems to me like the kind of guy, if there's going to be a rookie that comes in and he is voted on a captain as a quarterback, to me, he's the guy, just because, again, he's done everything the right way. The arm talent is obvious. His teammates have mentioned it today. Even DJ Moore said something about that in his press conference. Like, the arm talent was obvious on the field. It kind of wowed us all when we saw some of the throws he was able to make. And that's me paraphrasing here. But again, there were some interesting comments about him, both today in the press conference and what we've seen in the past from ever since the team has drafted him. So as you guys know, there was a lot of speculation about Caleb pre-draft, about how he was beforehand and the expectations he had, the contract thing. Everybody was talking about how he wants to have equity in a team and all this kind of stuff. And we've seen that that's all just been kind of, for lack of a better term, bullshit. It's kind of been some bullshit. So I mentioned on I think it was Greg Bragg's post last week that I thought some of that stuff that was being said was either other teams trying to divert the Bears away from wanting to make that decision, or just haters talking shit in essence. So, I mean, I really don't know. That's just kind of my speculation on it. But I feel like, all the things that were said about him in the past, whether some of it's true or not, again, Josh Lucas was another one who said some of this stuff on Hogan Johns, how one of the exact words that came out of his mouth was some of the things that he's heard about Caleb would, quote unquote, scare the shit out of him. So I don't know what is true. I don't know what was said, but everything we've seen so far from this kid has been perfect. I mean, really, for lack of a better word, it's been perfect. We've heard exactly what we want to hear, seen exactly what we want to see. he's come out and been a leader. So again, I would not be surprised to see him voted on as captain. I know I'm kind of going on a tangent with this, but I would not be surprised by that at all. So
I just
I don't
think there's so many names. I mean, this is a good
Yeah.
problem to have. There's so many guys that are leaders now, and I don't know how many captains they're going to select, but to me, it should be probably 3 on offense and 3 on defense. And, like you said, Tremaine Edmonds seems like a shoe-in. I feel like Kevin Byard is probably a shoe-in, and I don't think you could have
that wouldn't surprise me.
I don't think you
at
could
all.
have Jalen Johnson not be a captain. To me, he has got to be a captain, and he is a leader out there. The way he acts, the way he walks the rookies through things, and the younger players, he's been a model for that group. And I just think there's no way he's not a captain. I don't see an avenue where Keenan Allen is not a captain. I mean, you can just tell he's already walked in there and taken that leadership role. Cole Kmet should be a captain. DJ Moore should remain a captain. I just don't. I've heard the name Montez Sweat, but he's not a big vocal leader, even though he does lead by example. I would think that they'll probably use since there's so many so many players that are fitting for a captain. They're probably going to take the more vocal guys, in my opinion. But I don't know.
But
I don't.
The
know
one
that.
thing I would say about Sweat, though, is I wouldn't be surprised either way if he's voted captain or not. But the one thing I would say about him is he may not be the most vocal leader, but I think anyone on the team, especially in the defense, would tell you his impact and what he does for the team absolutely makes him a leader. I mean, everybody else is going to look to this guy as a very important piece to this defense. And Aldo makes the point that he should just focus on eating raw meat and sacking quarterbacks. And yeah, I think it would be great for him to do that. And if you guys haven't, speaking of Sweat, by the way, if you guys haven't read this article, there was an excellent article that Dan Pompey wrote on The Athletic about Montez Sweat, both before and after the trade to the Bears. And it was really an excellent piece. I don't want to get too far into what happened because I think you guys should take the time to read that yourselves. But it was a really good look into both him and what's been going on. So I really liked it, and I thought it was an interesting dive into both Sweat before he got here, and the fact that he didn't want to necessarily leave, and also the fact that once he did get here, how things changed so drastically for the defense. So yeah, that's just my take on Sweat. I wouldn't be surprised one way or the other. But that being said, that's pretty much really all I have about this stuff right now. Cliff says that Byard's been acting like a captain. He's telling guys where they should be and what they should be doing. And Tim had a good point. I wouldn't be surprised to see Byard be a captain either, just because he is a veteran and a good veteran presence. And obviously he's well respected by his teammates already and pointing guys around and whatnot. So that wouldn't surprise me to see him as a captain either. But to me, the two for sure shoe-ins are Tremaine Edmonds and DJ Moore. And again, I don't want to spend too much time on who we think is going to be captain because I don't think that's super important right now. And we've already kind of dug into it a bunch, but to kind of move on a little bit, Tim has an exercise that he wants to do with you guys. And we kind of want to go over some of our expectations of what we think is going to happen for the season. Some of the important factors to us as far as players are concerned. So, Tim, why don't you kind of get us started on that and give your opinion on it, and then I'll give mine on it, and we'll allow the chat to give their piece as well. And by the way, guys, if you have any questions for us, continue to flow those in because I want to go ahead and get those answered before the end of the show today.
So I thought this exercise was good because with us walking into training camp now, well, not us physically, but the Bears going into training camp starting tomorrow, I think a lot of this stuff is kind of going to be answered on its own. Seeing who's out there, who's playing, who's not, or who's practicing, who's not. And we're going to get to see, like last year, we saw a lot of things. And we knew during training camp last year that there was a really good rapport with DJ Moore and Justin Fields. Whether or not we saw a lot of success with Justin or not is another story, but you could see that they had that rapport, and DJ Moore had an excellent year last year, his best year ever in the NFL so far. So a lot of this stuff will get answered during and after training camp. But I want to do this little exercise. I've been hearing a little bit of this similar thing on some other podcasts, but I wanted to get some of our own questions and our own responses because a lot of them are the same old answers, and I just feel like there's some different answers that I think are more fitting for this. So I'm gonna mention some categories, and I'm going to name the player that I think fits that category the most. And you guys feel free to jump in the chat and throw some names out there as well. But let's start, Jeff. I'm going to start off with the player that needs to take the biggest jump this year. There's a lot of guys I thought that could have gone into this, actually, even though there's one pretty obvious answer to me. I think there's several. But to me, the player that needs to take the biggest jump is Gervon Dexter. I mean, we all know that the 3 technique is the engine that makes the defense go in this scheme. And Gervon, this is a guy drafted in the 2nd round last year. This is the guy that they were hoping could develop into that game-wrecking 3 technique. And let's face reality, with that 3 technique that can get pressure on the quarterback and just wreck the game like that, that opens it up for everybody else. And everybody's talking about how we need an opposite defensive end for Montez Sweat, and they're hoping that Austin Booker is that guy. But if we're being honest, guys, it doesn't matter where the pressure comes, whether it's on the outside or the inside. If they're getting consistent pressure, it doesn't matter as long as they're getting that pressure. So it's only going to help the secondary, the linebackers, and everybody else if they're able to get that pressure. And personally, I believe that Gervon Dexter, being that 3 technique, would be the best option, because now it makes it even more difficult, because who is the closest player to the quarterback? It's the defensive tackle, not the tackles, or not the defensive ends. So honestly, to me, that is the player to me that has to take the biggest jump. So Jeff, I don't know who you think there, but I think that's a given to me. It's got to be Gervon.
Well, I'll say I do agree with you about that. There's 2 guys for me in this. So I think that Gervon Dexter absolutely needs to take a big jump. And I don't necessarily agree with you that it doesn't matter where the pressure comes from, because it kind of does matter. I mean, a lot of people would tell you that getting interior pressure might be even more important than getting the pressure from the outside, because the guys are getting into the quarterback's face right away. And if you're getting pressure from both the interior and from the outside, you're giving the quarterback, less of an area to roam, less to get out and go. You know what I mean? So you're closing him off there. So I think, as Eberflus has mentioned, as you just said, the 3 tech is the engine that makes this defense go. And for Dexter to take that big jump is going to be a big part of this defense and getting pressure and becoming that elite defense that we want and hope them to be. Because I think right now they're on the fringe. And I've said this to you guys many times before on the podcast. I think we absolutely need to get more pressure from our defense in order for them to reach that level. But they're close. They're very, very close to that. The other player I would say I think needs to take a big jump is Braxton Jones. And the reason I say that is because, number one, he's had these steady increases. He's steadily gotten better from year to year from his rookie season to this point. He's got all the traits in the world that you look for. He's a great athlete. He's got length for days, and he's exactly the kind of person and character that you want in your locker room. That being said, he's not a great player yet. He's a good player, and he's had some issues in the past with his anchor and pass protection. The Bears went out and drafted a tackle in the 3rd round in Karan Amagaji, who's another guy that they think has versatility, can play inside or outside. And I've said this to you guys before, with Amagaji breathing down his neck. Now, that being said, he's on the non-football injury list right now, so he's not ready to play. But whenever he does get in there and he starts practicing, if Amagaji is going to be breathing down Jones' neck because of how well he's playing, that might push Braxton to play a little bit better and to be, more of what they need him to be to really solidify that line. Because if you got 2 guys on the outside who are doing their job, because we all expect Darnell Wright to be a beast this year. I do expect he's going to take a big jump. But if we can get Braxton Jones.
Ryan Poles did single his name out as well when he was talking about the offensive line.
He did today. He says that he said something along those lines that they anticipate him being an elite player in this league. Mm-hmm. So, and that's me paraphrasing, but that's basically what he said. So, and again, I just think that with Braxton Jones, if he really takes a big step this year, I mean, he's going to remove all doubt about how good he can be. We're talking about a 5th round pick here, guys. It's someone who wasn't even expected to be a starter. For him to come in and be the kind of guy like that and to make that kind of step, I think it's only going to be better for the offense, because to me, that's the biggest question mark right now is the offensive line, or the offense, I should say. How well can they hold up and protect Caleb? And I've said that to you guys many times in the past also. how well can they hold up and keep him off his back? Because that's going to be a big part of the offense's success. And again, I think Darnell Wright is right on the verge of being an elite player in this league. And if Braxton can take that big jump, look out, guys. We're talking about an elite pair of offensive tackles if that's the case. So, what more could you ask for? So, and if that's the case, then now you can use Amagaji possibly on the inside in the future. And now, maybe he pushes a guy out of a job. Maybe you don't need to re-sign Tevin. Maybe you don't have to worry about having Nate Davis around anymore. And that's another guy I want to get to in a little bit. But so to me, I think that's a big deal. I think seeing what Jones can do if he takes that big step is going to be a huge deal. So those are my two guys for that. And so let's move on to this next topic that Tim has, the player with the most to prove. And Tim, before you get to yours, I tend to agree. I think I tend to agree with the guy that you're going to say, because I think I'm going to say the same thing. And to me, it's Nate Davis. And the reason I say Nate Davis is because this guy, we haven't seen him do what we expected him to do. This guy was a guy, he signed for a 3-year, $30 million contract last year. That's big money. It's not huge money for a guard compared to what we've seen in the past year. Guys signing for $20 million, but that's big money. That's the guy you expect to come in and solidify your line. Now, granted, he's been kind of the beating stick for the fan base for the last year. And some of it is warranted, some of it not so much warranted. He had some off the field issues last year that I don't really want to get into too much, but to be fair to him, it was a sensitive subject. And on top of that, he had some injury issues. Now, the one concern I'm going to have is this. There has been some speculation in the past that people have talked about, some rumors that he's not a guy who tends to do a lot of practicing in the offseason. He doesn't practice a ton in both in OTAs, and I don't know if he really does a whole lot in training camp either, but I'm going to be looking out to see if this guy's in pads every day that the team is in pads. I'm going to be looking out to see if he's on the field practicing or if he's on the exercise bike or whatever the case may be, because I need to see that this guy is healthy before I have any kind of concerns about him, before I don't have concerns about him, because as of this moment, he hasn't been what they signed him to be. And if he can't stay on the field and be that player this year, they have an out after this year, and I don't expect to see him back. But that being said, I think Nate Davis is a good player. We've seen it in the past. We've seen him be a good player. And he had some moments last year where we're like, okay, yeah, this is why they signed the guy. But we also had some moments like, well, what the hell's going on here? So in my opinion, I do think he's the most proven. I think he's the guy that you have on your list too. I don't know if you want to add anything to this, Tim, but absolutely. I think Nate Davis absolutely is the guy with the most to prove right now.
And I absolutely want to add on to that. Nate Davis is my player for this with the most to prove. And look, I understand last year was a tough year for him, and with his mom passing, and there was a lot, and we didn't give him the benefit of the doubt because none of us knew the situation, and the Bears didn't share as well. They shouldn't have. It's not our business. But once it all got out, I expected him to have a little, it's not expected, but I understood him having a little bit of a down year. My problem doesn't have anything to do with the production last year. My issue is you're in the wrong sport if you don't want to practice. You're in the wrong position here. You got paid you're getting paid $30 million to play right guard for the Chicago Bears. That means you need to be playing. You need to be on the field. You're getting paid a lot of money. It is your duty to be on the field. I don't care if you've not practiced in the past. I don't care. I don't care what the excuse is. He should be out there. And here's my reason. There's a better right guard on this roster right now than you, and his name is Tevin Jenkins. And the only reason that Tevin Jenkins is playing left guard, and he played left guard last year, is because they didn't have anybody else who could play left guard last year. Because they needed Cody Whitehair to play center, and Lucas Patrick was trash. So what did they do? They moved Tevin Jenkins to left guard, and he was really good there. But guess who's he's even better on the right side. And he and Darnell Wright have a really, really great connection over there and a really good rapport with each other. And they were maulers in the run game together. That run game was ridiculous when those two were together on the right side of the field. I'm sorry, Nate Davis, but when you've got a guy like Tevin Jenkins on this roster, who, in my opinion, is the better right guard already, you should be on the field. I don't care if you're a veteran. I don't care that you don't like practicing. You're making $30 million. or $10 million a year, $30 million contract to play for the Bears to play right guard. And if you can't be on the field for training camp, and because you already weren't there for OTAs, you were there, but you weren't on the field. If you can't, after last season, he should have been in every rep possible this offseason. You had guys like Tremaine Emmons, who we just talked about, who was at everything this offseason, OTAs and everything. He still showed up. DJ Moore, veteran, was there the whole time.
Even
Kevin
Keenan
Byard,
Allen, who just got there.
Keenan Allen went to Caleb Williams' pro day. You're telling me that you can't get on the field for the OTAs, and if he's not there tomorrow, I'm going to have serious issues. But you're telling me you can't be on the field for that, but you have all your other teammates who can do that? I don't want to hear the excuses anymore. I'm done with it. So I'm to the point, tomorrow is going to be big for me, or this whole week. You know, if he misses a day or two, I understand that. That's not as big of a deal. But if he's not going to be on the field for training camp, I have an issue with that. And I think it's time to cut ties. I don't care if we're just starting. That's the cut candidate to me if that happens, because you have other guys on the roster right now.
Well, before we move on to the next topic, just to play devil's advocate for a second, in regards to your comments on Tevin Jenkins, that's another guy that's got to stay healthy, Tim. I mean,
I don't disagree.
You can talk about Nate Davis and staying healthy all you want, but Jenkins has to stay healthy. But
they're two totally different players as far as effort and intensity.
However, Jenkins, again, has not played a full season since he's been a Bear. And this is a huge year for him, too. It's a contract year for him. So it's another guy, to me, that, has a lot to prove. Can you stay on the field for an entire season? Because, in my opinion, he needs to if he wants to get paid. Because, we've seen when he plays, he's a dominant player, especially in the run game. So if he can stay on the field for all 17 games, I agree with you. It's a big deal. That being said, again, he's got a lot to prove because he also has to stay healthy in order to gain a contract. Because as of right now, I think if you ask Ryan Poles today whether they want to extend him or not, if they had to absolutely make a decision today, I think they would not. I think they'd say no, and they'd go with what they have, or they'd make draft picks the next couple of years to try to replace him with. Because
Jeff, you're actually walking into my next topic. So let's go ahead and go here.
Go ahead.
The next one is the player most on the fringe to be extended. There's a lot of players coming up for extension next year, but that to me is Tevin Jenkins. And that goes right along with what you're talking about right now. He has got to stay on the field. He's got to play. To me, he's got to play 17 games, not 16, not 15. He needs to play. Greg said on GTF
this week.
Yes, and I 100% agree with Greg. He needs to play 17 games and be healthy for those 17 games, and also continue to play at the caliber that he has. So I agree with everything that you're saying, Jeff, and it was nothing. It was no slight to. I understand Tevin Jenkins' issues, and my point with Nate Davis was that the difference is Tevin Jenkins isn't missing time because he doesn't want to be out there. He's missing time for injury, which he does need to stay healthy. But those are two totally different mindsets to me. And I'm old school, man. I feel like, guys, if you can be out there, you should be out there. I don't care what level it is. I don't care how great of a player you are. You should be out there. Guys like Tom Brady would go out there and do these kind of things, and he is the greatest of all time. So to me, that was a big deal. But I agree. Tevin Jenkins, again, he's got to stay on the field. And to me, if he plays 17 games, no question, he should be extended and be on this team. But he's got to stay healthy. And honestly, if he doesn't, I don't think he is getting extended because we have depth now.
Well, the price point is going to be a big part of that too, depending on how much he tries to command in a contract extension. But yeah, I agree. He's got to play a full season. I don't even think, like Greg said on his show, I don't think it can be a 14, 15 games. I think he's got to play all 17 too. I think he's got to show that he can play a full season. And he's done a lot of work. It's not like this guy's lazy. He's done a lot of work to try to reinvent himself. He's eating healthier. He goes to Pilates. He does so much stuff to try to stay healthy. The problem with Tevin Jenkins has always been when the Bears draft him, he had a back injury right away. I mean, and back injuries are not something easy to come back from. So he's kind of, I don't want to say he's had issues from the beginning, but as far as injury concerns, he has, because he hasn't been able to stay healthy. And I don't want to add too much more to this before moving on, but yeah, I think he's definitely the player most on the fringe to be extended, because the only other guy I can think of that's going into his fourth year right now, that hasn't been extended. No, that was a different year. The only guy that really that from this past era that has been extended and really isn't in this position is Cole Kmet, and he already got that extension. So
Jalen Johnson.
I mean, Jalen Johnson got his extension too. So again, this is another guy, this is a guy who, yeah, he's definitely the most on the fringe. There are some draft picks that Poles has made that are going into year 3 this year that I think have a serious chance to be extended next year. Kyler Gordon being one of them. So we'll see what happens with that. But as of right now, at this moment, yeah, I think Tevin Jenkins is most on the fringe to be extended. And again, it's all going to come down to me, whether he can play a full season and what that price point's going to be. So let's go ahead and move on to your next topic, Tim. And
yeah, we got a few more, so let's try to breeze through the next couple of these a little bit more quickly. But my next one is the under-the-radar player that's going to have a breakout season. I think there's a lot of guys that are going to have good seasons this year and breakout, including Tremaine Edmonds. I think he's going to have a monster season. But to me, this one is Tyreek Stevenson. I think he's a little bit underrated as far as what we're talking about, under the radar from guys we're talking about. But I just think he's going to have a big breakout second season. He with Jalen Johnson on the other side of him, who's helped him out tremendously. Once he started figuring out how to play last year in the NFL, we saw a totally different player in the second half of the season than we saw in the first half. I think he is going to explode and have a big season. I don't think a whole lot more needs to be said about that. He's very good about getting his hand on the ball and deflecting it. So when the ball's thrown his way, I feel really good about Tyreek Stevenson making a play. Go ahead, Jeff. I don't know if you have somebody different, but Tyreek Stevenson's my under the radar breakout star.
I actually do have a different player, and I wouldn't say either of these guys are necessarily under the radar. I do agree with you about Stevenson, but Greg made a point on his show a few weeks back that Stevenson really started to break out the second half of last year, which is it's not very common for a first-year player to do that, to where they make that big breakout late in the season. Because if you guys remember, he was getting targeted pretty early and often at the beginning of the season last year. And towards the end of the season, he really ramped it up. I mean, he was getting interceptions, he's breaking up passes, and he really started to become a very legitimate outside corner next to Jalen Johnson. So to me, it's a great spot to have these two guys for the very near future, because Tyreek Stevenson's already a beast. And so the reason I say, as far as having a different player have a breakout season, and I don't even know if he's a guy that's under the radar because we've already talked about him, is Darnell Wright. I expect him to make a humongous jump this year. He kind of showed some flashes last year, as we've mentioned to you guys before. He shut down several premier pass rushers, Aiden Hutchinson being one of them. I mean, you would never know that Aiden Hutchinson was as great of a player as he is if you'd watched him play against Darnell Wright last year, because he couldn't really do much with him. So, and then Myles Garrett, I think, had 1 sack on him, but for the most part, he was shut down too in that Cleveland game. Wright had some really good moments. There were some players that got him a handful of times last year. There were some moments where he had some rookie mistakes and mental errors and whatnot, but for the most part, this guy is stonewalling people already. And I really think that this year, going into year 2, is when he's going to make that big jump. And I think you're talking about a guy who's going to be a dominant tackle for the next several years. And I think it was a great pick last year for them to take him with all the Jalen Carter controversy that they had. I think moving down and going after Darnell Wright was the right move. No pun intended there. But the guy is just, I really think he's going to jump out and make that big break this year, that big breakout, and be a formidable and just, borderline elite offensive lineman this year and for the next several years to come. I think he's an all-pro potential kind of player, and I would like to see him make that jump this year, and I think he very well should and could. So go ahead with your next topic, Tim. I'm not sure exactly what it is because I don't have it in front of me here, but go ahead and move us on.
Okay, so we've got 3 more, and I think this one's going to spark the biggest debate of any of them. And for this, I have my most underrated player is Khalil Herbert. No question in my mind. Khalil Herbert is the most underrated player on this roster and the guy that we are not talking about enough. And if we are talking about him, as far as fans and media go, it's that he's a potential cut candidate. I see absolutely zero avenue where Khalil Herbert is getting cut. And here's why. We saw last year, guys go down all the time at the running back position. And there was one point where last year, Kari Blasingame was our lead running back in a game because of injuries. Now, Khalil Herbert, I cannot seem to figure out why on earth this guy is not getting any credit at all for what he can do. He has led the NFL in yards per carry the last 2 seasons. I understand that he's not the greatest pass blocker. I understand he's not the greatest pass catcher, but he improved immensely on those 2 roles last year compared to years past. And I really thought that that was going to help him out as far as carving out a role. And he did start he was the starter last year. He was the guy. You know, they make, of course, it's a committee, so they're going to, the other guys are going to share the load as well. But when Khalil Herbert was healthy, Deontay Foreman never saw the field. Very, very, very little. So I don't understand this whole hate on Herbert and why everybody thinks he's a cut candidate. It's the NFL. In the running back position, it's hard to get guys to stay on the field. And DeAndre Swift has had a lot of injury concern in his career. Last season was his healthiest year. I believe he only missed 1 game. But he's not been healthy in his career. So you would have to have running backs. And I'm sorry, but I don't think Roschon Johnson is ready to take on a lead running back role. He's a nice piece, and he's a good change of pace guy, but I don't think he's going to be a guy that can just carry the load. I just don't see that in his game. I do think he's the best pass blocker of the bunch, no question, and he's pretty good in the passing game as well. I don't think he's ready to take on that type of role. And I still, in my opinion, I think Khalil Herbert is the number 2 running back on this roster, and he's going to open the season as the number 2 running back on this roster. So for all of those things, I just think he is the most underrated player on this team. And again, you don't lead the NFL in yards per carry 2 seasons in a row, and that mean nothing. The guy is a player, and he can absolutely play. And I know that he's a little bit more one-dimensional, but at the same time, when you run that well, and I also thought that he improved immensely in the other 2 categories, I think that's the most underrated player on this roster and the guy that we are not talking about enough in the right ways.
Well, I hate to cut this off too short. I don't think we're going to have time to get to the last 2 questions or last 2 topics, because I want to get some of you guys' questions in here before the next show comes on. But as far as most underrated player, there are some people that say that think that Khalil Herbert's a cut candidate, and that may or may not be true. We'll have to wait and see for that. But as far as most underrated player, I would say right now it's probably Tremaine Edmonds, in my opinion, just because the guy, he was really starting to come on late in the season last year, and he had, several picks for, an inside linebacker, and he's big and he's long, and he's exactly the kind of guy that Eberflus wanted. And a lot of people talk about his leadership and stuff, but the guy's a damn good football player too. And when the defense started playing really well last year, Tremaine Edmonds was a big part of that. So in my opinion, he's the most underrated on the field player as far as this team is concerned right now. So I don't want to dig any more into this. Like I said, we're running out of time here. So I want to get some of you guys' questions that you had here in the chat. And there was one in particular here from Dante that I noticed. He wants to know if this is a redshirt year for Karan Amagaji. And that's a good question, Dante. I think it very well could be. It all just kind of depends on his rehab process. He had a quad injury, and that's a difficult injury to come back from. It takes a long time for a quad to heal right. So is it a redshirt year for him? I don't anticipate him starting games, but if he comes back healthy at some point in the season, which I think we're hoping he will and should. I think he does play some and gets a taste of what the NFL is like, but I don't expect him to start any games. And if he does have to start games, I think that's a little concerning because it means the rest of your depth is having some injury issues too. So I don't know if it's necessarily a redshirt year, quote unquote, because I think he'll play some games and get in. But even redshirt players in college, I think, can play in 4 games. So I guess to an extent it could be that, and it's a good question. It's a good question to ask. So what do you think, Tim?
I do think it's a redshirt year for Karan Amagaji. I think they're going to treat it a lot like a college player. If you heard the press conference today, Ryan Poles basically said that Karan is healthy, but the timetable is undefined when he's going to come back. They don't really know. So to me, that kind of sounds like they're just kind of trying to take it easy with the guy. They don't want to risk re-injury, and they don't need him right now. I feel like that's kind of the boat that they're in. And I do think it's more of a red shirt because unless there's an injury to somebody, he's probably not going to see a lot of playing time. I do think that they'll probably, as long as he is 100% healthy, he probably will get some preseason action in. But as far as regular season goes, I think it is more of a redshirt season. I think he's kind of going to take a back seat and really get fully healthy and play behind these other guys unless he's needed. That's my opinion.
Let's see if we can get to another comment or two on here. This is a good question Aldo asked here.
Yeah.
Who is the one player who could become a star of Hard Knocks? And TJ Edwards said today in his press conference, it could be DeMarcus Walker. And that doesn't surprise me. If anybody's been paying attention to his team the last 2 years, can see that DeMarcus Walker has quite the personality, and he's definitely not afraid to show that. And, I just kind of wish that his personality was as vibrant as his play on the field, for lack of a better word there. But, he's another guy that I could see taking a jump and being a much better player with Montez Sweat alongside him. But if I had to get there's two guys that I think who could be stars on Hard Knocks. And obviously Caleb is the obvious answer because the cameras are going to be on him like crazy. But I also think that if there's going to be another star on the show, it's going to be Jalen Johnson. Just because
I was just going to say the same thing.
I mean, he's a phenomenal player, number one. And number two, he's a guy that's not afraid to chirp a little bit either. He's going to talk. So I think he's another guy who could very well be a star on this show also. So you want to add anything to that, Tim, before
I was going to say Jalen Johnson was my number one choice for that just because he has so much personality. That was a big one that I think. And I think there's two others. I think Keenan Allen is going to be a star on it. I think he just showed that personality. I think DJ Moore is going to be a star on it. I know he doesn't have the big personality, but just watching him on 1920, seeing how he is on the football field and how he just has fun with these guys. He's a lot more open than he is. He's more reserved in those press conferences and when he's talking to the media. But on the field, I think this guy is about as big of a personality as there is, and I think that's really going to show on the cameras. So honestly, if I had to pick individuals, those would be the ones. But I think in general, that wide receiver room and the secondary room are both going to be big stars on Hard Knocks, in my opinion. Both of them. Yeah,
I think DJ Moore is going to be a star on the show, mostly because of his play on the field, because in my opinion, he's the best player on the team. So that's just my take on there. And real quick, let me get to your comment here, Cliff, or your question before I close this out. Cliff wants to know if Amagaji is on active pup or he's on reserve pup. Active means he can be activated at any time. Reserve means he would need to sit out games. He's not on pup at all, which is the physically unable to perform list. He's on the non-football injury list. Yes. So as far as I know, he can be activated at any time. It all just kind of depends on how his health is concerned, when he's ready to go, when he's ready to rock and roll. So,
and before there's any speculation on that, I don't think it literally means it's not a football injury. I believe it was a football injury, but because it happened in college, they can call it not football injury for the NFL because it didn't happen in the NFL.
Right. I think it's that the football injury list would be dictated on what happens when he's in the league. So once a player is in the league, whether it's part of practice that he gets hurt or whatever. So we're out of time here, guys. We appreciate you being here. We didn't get to everything we wanted to, but next week, I don't think we're going to be here next week. We very well could be. It all just depends. Just keep in touch with us here, guys, because there's some stuff going on. But in any case, we really appreciate you guys joining us in. There's a show coming on after this. Somebody big just died with Mike North. It's about TV star from the 70s, Bob Newhart. If you guys have not heard of him, he's a very well-loved individual in the TV community. And he's one of the funnier people that every time I hear somebody talking about it, they talk about how hilarious the guy was. So that should be a good show for you guys to check out. And before we get out of here, just a quick reminder, as always, give us a like on the video, please, guys. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, so we can provide you more content. You can follow us all at Barroom Network, @ Jeff Willis, and at Tim Willis 24 on X. Antman says Bob was a legend, and that's the show that's coming up after this one. So stick around for that, guys. In other words, or I should say otherwise, we'll see you when we're back here, hopefully in the next couple weeks or so. So bear down, guys.
Got Bears.
The Willis Twin Towers podcast is a Barroom Network production. Jeff and Tim Willis are the co-hosts and co-producers. Aldo Gandia is executive producer. Music is licensed from Pond 5. Any copyrighted material used was done under the Fair Use Doctrine for commentary, criticism, and informative purposes. All of our programming is available in audio-only format by subscribing to the Barroom Network wherever you download podcasts. Videos are archived on YouTube.